and I know each other for a while now, and I'm going to call her Tindi through this episode. But this is Dr. Kakuti.
It's fine.
And you're a gynecologist.
Yes.
And we've just heard Emma talking about endometriosis and the gruesome, the grueling effect it's had on her life since she was 17. The overbleeding. She was anemic at some point. She's had to go through various fertility treatments, and God bless her, she, actually managed to conceive twice. Tell us about endometriosis from a professional medical view. For those who are watching, we really need to know what it is.
So endometriosis is a condition and an abnormality whereby the lining of the uterus, called the endometrium, grows outside the uterus. Okay. So when the uterus is being developed, it has 3 layers. So you have the outside called the serosa, the covering, then the muscular layer called the submural layer, and then you have the subserosal layer. So within the subserosal layer is where you have the lining of the uterus, which now normally sheds every month, ideally for every woman during her menstrual period. So when that lining grows out of in any other part of the body, and we're not sure about how it migrates. That could have happened when the baby is being developed as a fetus, or sometimes there's one theory called whereby the cervical canal is so narrow. So as she gets her menstrual periods, the uterus contracts, but some of the blood is pushed back through the fallopian tubes and spills into the abdomen. Okay. So some of those endometrial deposits will be deposited in various areas, in the rectum, on the ovaries, in the fallopian tubes, and that's what is called endometriosis. The other type of endometriosis is adenomyosis, whereby now the lining of the uterus grows within the uterus but into the muscle. Okay. But that's not as it's not as common and as detrimental. Okay, so that's
how it happens, which that's a great explanation. But why does it happen? There's a lot of taboo in relation to all these infertility issues like PCOS and endometriosis. They had many abortions, that's why it's happening. Or too much sex. It's silly things. But why does so just shed some light on that.
So the theory of what causes endometriosis is not absolutely known. These are theories that have been thought to be possible that would cause endometriosis. So I've said one is during the development of the embryo, during the first 3 months of pregnancy, when a woman is carrying a baby who's a girl. So sometimes the cells that would develop to become the lining of the uterus will develop outside the uterus. And then as the baby grows, but when they get periods, when the symptoms will start, before menstrual cycle, they're not going to have. The other one is someone may have a very narrow cervical canal. So when she gets her periods, because period blood is not like water, it doesn't flow. There can be like little tiny clots or some lumps. So the uterus, like a baby coming out, has to contract. And when that contraction occurs like this, so some people get pains, others now the blood is retrograde. We call it retrograde menstruation. So you're not menstruating through the vagina, but through the fallopian tubes. Then those deposits are going to be thrown into the pelvic region, on the intestines, on the rectum, on the ovaries, on the fallopian tubes. And so when a woman gets her periods, these deposits behave like the endometrium in the uterus. They also bleed. And they also respond to the hormones and the cyclical changes of the menstrual cycle. So she's going to get pain.
So what do you have to tell all those aunties and grandmoms and old ladies who have a lot to say about why people have endometriosis? Like, can you just totally rubbish all those things?
So you now professionally, you always have to listen. I always say, don't ever rubbish someone's theories, because these are our mothers and our grandmothers and they have their theories. You have to be very polite about how you tell them that that's not it. So you have to, sometimes I have to draw. I have to take a picture, like a paper and a piece of paper, or a model of a uterus, and show them this is what normally happens. Others will ask, is it hereditary? It's not necessarily hereditary. Majority of patients who I've seen with endometriosis with PCOS, nobody else in their families have them. So we do not know why it chooses certain people to have it and other people know. So you have to be careful about how you debunk the myths in a polite and gentle manner, so they don't feel offended. Because as Emma shared, is the mothers will think this is a hysterical girl. She's in school. She just wants time off to school. So you have to be very careful how you talk about it. Mothers have to be explained to about the possibility of endometriosis as a diagnosis when their daughters have very painful periods as well. And so this is a conversation, even as we have it here, is I would encourage you and your team is to take it to the schools. So that as in primary schools, as girls get their periods, when someone has painful periods and the mother is telling them, oh, it's normal. Someone else's daughter has the same problem. Why
Meza
are you fussing
maramoja.
about Meza maramoja? And the mom goes to, and this days in Kenya you can buy medication
It's
over the
true,
counter.
yeah.
So how can we help this woman to understand that this could be endometriosis? Because remember, the only way you can diagnose endometriosis is seeing the lesions, and that's now through laparoscopy or surgery. Yeah.
And I mean, how serious is endometriosis? Can it be fatal?
The worst case scenario is, because now these lesions are migratory.
Okay.
So remember, there's retrograde menstruation.
Menses, yeah.
So the worst case we've had, and there's a patient right now, I think in the US, if I'm not wrong, she's a Kenyan. She has endometriotic lesions in the brain and in the lung. So she's actually on life support.
Oh, okay.
That's how bad it is. Because the same lesions can go into the bloodstream and then be transported like cancer cells. So if you have cancer of, let's say, the lungs, those cells can migrate in with what we call metastatic lesions.
Yeah.
So metastasis means that cell has moved from its original position to another body part. So the worst case scenario is we've had about endometriosis of the lungs, endometriotic lesions in the brain.
Okay.
So the one who has in the lungs, people didn't know what they were dealing with until they took a biopsy.
Yeah.
So people are seeing lesions and wondering what are these,
Yeah.
and it's like absolutely very rare.
Wow.
It's very rare. I've never heard of a case in Kenya. The one we know of is a patient who's abroad.
But the fact that they do move is enough for you to need to know you need to take.
You need to know that you need to get treatment.
treatment.
Yeah, you need to get treatment.
You need
for
to get
it, yeah.
treatment. You
Yeah.
can't take the risk because they have moved. They've already moved
they
from
can
the
move,
inside
yeah.
out.
And we cannot
So
know
it's,
who is going to have it bad or who's not going to have it bad.
yeah.
So the ones who have extreme pelvic pain. I think I watched a show where one woman said, she was asked, on a scale of 1 to 10, what's your pain? She said 15. And when we score pain in medicine, there's a score 1 to 10. And she said, mine is 15. When I had my babies, it wasn't this bad.
Yeah.
And I couldn't relate to that kind of pain, because a woman in labor goes through, I'm thinking it's 20 out of 10, and she's saying 15. So this is not something to be taken lightly. It's not something to shun a woman about and say, oh, you're being hysterical, or she wants to miss work. As Emma has said, you need a supportive spouse, a supportive mom, supportive classmates.
Yeah.
So when we go to schools and talk to other girls, they will not make fun of the other girl who has that problem, who's in sick bay for 3
and
days.
the other girl can understand
Absolutely
what she's going through,
Exactly.
because there's the thing about having all this pain, looking, why am I different, and not understanding what it is. And it's as simple as knowing, okay, it's endometriosis. There's treatment for it.
Yes.
So wow, this is so it's emotional because of the misconception of women generally.
Absolutely.
The taboo on menses in general.
Discussing it is a taboo.
And then so you're thinking, how will anyone understand my pain?
Yeah.
Because how many billion women in the world are having their periods and going about their day as usual?
Even
and
mothers,
here I am sitting in my sofa thinking I can't leave the room.
Yeah. What's shocking me in my profession is seeing mothers who are not addressing menstruation with their daughters. And they come and say, please talk to her. And I'm like, this is your job.
Yeah.
Mine is to manage a condition that she may have. Unlike our time where our mothers came guns blazing. You're going to get your period, it's going to happen, this is what can happen. So we have to be sensitive about it. And I'm thinking one of the best ways to do this is actually go to schools. And I remember when we were in school, people came to talk to us about having periods. I remember the boys were kicked out, and I'm like, no, they should not be kicked out this time. They need to be there to understand that this conversation is to be had. They're going to be husbands one day. They're going to be, they may have a sister who has endometriosis, who has bad pain. They need to know how to deal with it, how to support this particular person. Yeah. Wow.
So so I come from my story is that about 15 years ago I was diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome. About 13 years ago, and then just 1 year ago or less than a year ago with they found the endometriosis, a small lesion.
A small lesion, yeah.
And but been married twice in the span of 8 years, trying to get a baby, and it's not happening. But then you hear a lot of stories of that's how different we are. Because here's Emma with endometriosis since she was 17 with 2 kids.
Yeah.
I meet tens and hundreds of women, in the last few years who have lived with polycystic ovarian syndrome forever, way before, and they've got maybe 3-4 kids.
Yeah.
So what's the difference? Because I understand my infertility issues to stem from PCOS and now endometriosis. Whereas there are women out there with both conditions having babies.
So if you look at polycystic ovarian syndrome and endometriosis, they're two different diagnoses.
Yeah.
So with polycystic ovarian disease, you have cysts that form on the ovaries that prevent ovulation.
Yeah.
So if you ovulate, you get a period. That's the normal cycle. So if you do not ovulate, the cycle begins whereby there's uterine proliferation, whereby now the estrogen brings the blood into the uterus.
Yeah.
Let me use layman's language, and then it proliferates and proliferates. So the period you get is not because you ovulated. It's called threshold bleeding.
Okay.
The uterus is saying, I'm holding enough blood. It's been 4 months. So, and when they bleed for a long time. Most women who have endometriosis actually don't have a problem conceiving unless endometrial lesions have been deposited on the ovary, where may prevent ovulation, but it's very rare, but majority because endometrial lesions destroy the fallopian tube.
Yeah.
So if they block the fallopian tube, so the lesions eat up the tube, and the more you have the periods, they cause a lot of inflammation. And the tube is very narrow. Yeah. It's narrower than the inside. You know that when you remove a biro pen, that inner lining of the pen, it's thinner than that. So any small lesion will block it. So that's what would, for most people who have endometriosis, that's what will cause. But majority of endometriosis patients tend to have normal regular cycles. They have normal, PCOS do not have normal regular cycles, but both conditions can lead to infertility. And now we are seeing many young girls with PCOS, because before it was associated with either diabetes, hypertension, obesity. I'm seeing young girls as 15 and the scan tells me polycystic ovarian disease and she's growing hair, and I'm what's happening? So you have to learn how to address this issue. So a girl will come and tell me, I'm having 4 periods a year. Her friends are having a period every month. So anyone having less than 8 periods a month, we suspect that they may be having polycystic ovarian syndrome. We do not usually manage polycystic ovarian syndrome unless they desire to conceive. The only thing is we make sure is that they have to bleed. So the bleeding, because if you don't also get a period, the more hyperplasia you have in the lining of the uterus predisposes them to endometrial cancer. So we must give them pills to bleed. And now the challenge with endometriosis as well as PCOS, the symptoms tend to be relieved by giving them pills, the contraceptive pills. So I have to write a letter to a school headmistress telling them why this girl is taking pills. So now there are newer drugs in the market that are not necessarily hormonal, that are at least giving us a breather. There's a lot of now what are called supplements, and there are new drugs in the market now that don't require one to take hormonal pills and help them. So because the biggest challenge will be when they desire babies, then that's when we help, really say, let's tackle this, whatever. But it's not necessarily curable. Neither is endometriosis. And one thing I learned from one of my professors in school is you need to tell people that endometriosis is not curable. Even if you do laparoscopy and go and pick the lesions that you can see, others can grow. Now the mistake is going in again and getting another surgery. Remember, anytime you do surgery, you're putting someone at risk. General anesthesia, perforation. If I go poking a lesion at the rectum, I may end up injuring the rectum. I have to call a surgeon. Trust me, your bill is going to be more than $500,000 because the 2 specialists operating on you.
That's the next thing I wanted to talk to you about. Is women generally love to save their money and use it on their families. It's the maternal thing we have in us. Even if she's got a flu or she's really sick, she's broken an arm, she'll want to treat it at home and spend the money buying furniture or something for the house or for her kids. It's how we are. But then now here we are with so many issues that are affecting women. PCOS, endometriosis, let me name it, there's so many. Infertility treatments and whatever it is you need. And these things cost an arm and a leg.
Astronomical cost.
So now we're telling women and girls, get treated. Don't suffer in pain. And if you don't treat, for example, endometriosis, in very rare cases it can be fatal, or because they move, it can go and stick to another organ of your body. So you need to get it treated. But what's the treatment cost for this? How are women, struggling, whether financially, different levels of people who are able to afford this? Would you know if NHIF covers this? How, or do you know if the government's doing anything in your field? Do you know if they're actually doing anything to get more women-related issues covered by NHIF and insurance for that matter?
So first of all, with endometriosis, let's start with the gold standard for diagnosing endometriosis is laparoscopy. You're looking at which is only offered in private hospitals and Kenyatta Hospital. I think now maybe Coptic and other smaller mission hospitals have begun.
Okay.
But then again, trying to convince an insurance company to say, can you please cover for this because we want to diagnose. Insurance companies want to cover for what's the diagnosis, what is it, are you offering treatment?
Yeah.
But if I write a letter to the insurance company for pre-authorization saying, I suspect this, can I diagnose? It's going to be a cat and mouse game for them to agree to pay. So, and then laparoscopy also, if you go to Kenyatta being the only public hospital, I think, if I may be wrong, offering laparoscopy, the waiting list when I was in Kenyatta was about 6 months. Was 6 months. So in Kenyatta, it is affordable. So, and the good thing right now, I understand things in Kenyatta now have changed. I think they have about 3 theaters now operating with laparoscopy. So the waiting times have reduced. And so since endometriosis is not a detrimental, life-threatening condition, then you can wait and then you're put on treatment.
Yes.
For young girls who are in school, the debate, if I suspect she has endometriosis and I tell the parent, I suspect your daughter's painful periods may be due to endometriosis, or maybe she may be having painful periods which is called dysmenorrhea due to something else. If we think it is endometriosis, the only way we can diagnose this is laparoscopy. And a parent will ask you, so you want to subject my daughter to diagnose a condition, and if you don't find it's endometriosis, I'm going to pay for it.
Exactly.
It's a fight.
Oh.
So most parents will tell me, if you think it is endometriosis, is there anything you can give her to relieve her symptoms? Yes, give. So we will give you treatment for endometriosis without a diagnosis.
Yes.
For me, I think sometimes I find comfort when the girl tells me, you know what, doc, whatever you gave me is working.
It's working.
Then in my head, I'm thinking, then she may be having endometriosis. But we will require her, then maybe when she's an adult, starts working, then maybe they can do a proper diagnosis and say, let's go look at it. If you're looking at fertility treatments for PCOS, because the good thing now is we're putting surgery as the last resort, unless whereby we go and do ovarian drilling, which also has its risks, because the more you puncture and touch and burn ovarian tissue, you may predispose women to early menopause because you're burning follicles and burning ova. So they have to go on either ovulation induction. If it fails, go on IVF. There is a bill in Parliament that I think has been put forward to request for NHI to cover infertility. So under the civil servants cover, it is covering up to 350,000. For other people, it's not covering. There is no corporate that will cover for, that I've seen, that will cover for IVF.
They don't.
So most people say, you know what, it's 250,000 in India, let me go to India. Here you're looking at between 400 to around 700,000 shillings. And the thing about IVF is it's not 100%.
Exactly. You could have spent 700,000 shillings of money you've saved for so long, and it won't work because it's not 100%.
It's not 100% guaranteed. So the cost implications of infertility, of managing PCOS and endometriosis with infertility, even buying the common drug we're now giving called Visan for endometriosis, I think it's about 2,000 to 3,000. Who in the rural areas will be able to afford that? They'll not be able to afford. So those who are not able to afford them, we have to, for control of symptoms, and they can't do laparoscopy, then we say let's put them on the combined oral contraceptive, so that they can bleed every month and have a regular cycle. And most of them actually have relief because you reduce the amount of bleeding, you kind of reduce the size of the lesion so they don't bleed as much. When they get a period, they find some relief. But now having to communicate to the school that you're giving a young girl hormones, and of course we're trying to avoid hormonal treatment long term. You know, for especially from a young age. If you start your periods at 12 and I'm giving you hormones from 14, it's not So
what I'm hearing here is obviously these are treatable issues. They don't disappear.
They're not curable but manageable.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And treatment is necessary.
Yes. Diagnosis.
However, it is costly.
It is costly.
Unfortunately.
It is costly.
Unfortunately, it's costly, but unfortunately, you have to get it treated. Otherwise, I mean, the struggle you need to live with, the effects that it will have are devastating.
Absolutely.
But what I'm taking, so it's unfortunate, and I think we need doctors, we need people themselves, just individuals like us, to be able to push and put pressure on the government to look into these issues because they're becoming more frequent. They're becoming more necessary for them to consider, and we need to look into them.
Yeah.
Like you said, India is an option because it's so much cheaper. Everything there is cheaper, so people
Everything's
tend to go there
yeah.
more. I had this discussion in a previous show with a cancer patient, and she said everyone thinks of going to India, but no one thinks about the support system you're leaving behind. When you're sitting in a bed in India, not able to talk to that language and not be around people, and you're suffering with cancer, whatever it is that you're, and you're sitting there alone, exactly, because
you can
of
only
the
go
cost.
with one person,
or maybe
and
even alone,
or even alone,
exactly.
Yes.
And she said, yes, you're saving a lot on cost, but the emotional
it will break you down.
trauma you're putting on yourself is
Exactly.
crazy. So as much as India is an option because it's cheap and people should and are using it because it is there, the Kenyan government really needs to give us an option to stay at home so that our parents, our mothers, our fathers, our husbands can be around us during this time.
Yeah.
So what I took from you, what you've said and what Emma said are very few things, which is one, these things are time consuming. They take time.
They take time.
There's a lot of pain involved. There's a lot of trauma involved because there's emotions from the hormones, there's pain, you know, there's the anger from the pain.
Diarrhea.
There's all that, there's intimacy issues that are at stake here as well. There's infertility issues here at stake. And at the same time, there's financial issues.
Yes.
It's just another burden women need to carry again. But what the most beautiful thing that you need to cap all this in is support systems.
Support systems.
Like anything in this world, anything can be done, no matter how long it takes, as long as you've got the right support system, you're halfway there.
You're halfway there.
That's it.
Yes.
If somebody just is able to understand you in so much pain, you may not be able to have the money to go for that endometriosis, treatment or to get it diagnosed, but this, I'll bring you soup. Sit here, don't move.
Absolutely.
I'll clean the house today. Here, don't go to work. You know, your bosses are saying just stay at home. Work from your laptop at home if you have to.
Yeah.
Here's some painkillers.
Yeah.
That's taken half of it off your work because you're already worrying, will I lose my job? Will I lose my husband? Or, what's going to happen? So I think the biggest take home here, guys, is support system. It's extremely important. You're more than halfway there if you've got understanding surrounding you. Thank you so much, Tindi.
Thank you, Najda.
I can't, it's invaluable.
Thank
how
you.
much you've given to us today.
Welcome.
I'm thinking about so many things already. I'm sure our viewers are as well. And this platform is to just help women understand things a bit more. And you've done that for us today.
Thank you so much,
Thank you so
Najda.
much for having me.
Thank
here.
you.
I'm hoping to see you here again.
I can't wait.
Great.
Thank you. Just as Najda said, there is a lot of support for those who have endometriosis. You can get support from your family as well as join various endometrial foundations and societies with other women who are walking through the same struggle. There is hope. It is not curable, but it is manageable, and you can live a normal life just like any other woman. Thank you.
That was an amazing discussion, an extremely important discussion, and we cannot have enough discussions about issues affecting women. Endometriosis is a silent pain that women are living with. Infertility is a huge pain women are living with, and we need to have more discussions on this, and we will surely in the future be hosting some more as well. For my parting shot, I'd like to quote the Holy Quran, Surah 94 verse 5, that says, "So verily, with every difficulty there is relief." Much love and God bless.